welcome. I have two guests today, Felicia Rubinstein, who is the founder of HAYVN Coworking in Darien, Connecticut, and Kerrie McDevitt, who is Kerrie, I assume you're the founder. You said you're a women-owned business of Impact Growth Partners, also in the state of Connecticut.
I'm not the founder, I'm sorry, but I am a senior consultant.
Okay, perfect. So, but women-owned business. So yeah, we'll dive into your full background. I just want to tee up the topic for today. So we're going to talk about becoming a certified B Corp, which Felicia has done. And it's a global certification, which Kerrie just shared. And this came up, I was on a call and it came up because there was another co-working space, Shift Workspaces in Colorado, are also B Corp certified. And it's not very common that we come across this. It's a lot of work. I remember when Felicia was thinking about it, being like, Felicia, do you have time for this? But I think a lot of folks are really curious about it. And Felicia, I think a lot of this was values driven for you, and it was important for you to do. So I want to dive into kind of what does it mean? What does the process look like? All the things. So why don't we start, Felicia, can you give a quick, anything else you want to share about your intro with the audience? You've been on the podcast one time. It's been a while. I've known Felicia for a long time, and I mention you all the time. I probably mention you like every other episode.
I'm so honored.
Well, that's why I was like, we're not even talking about any of the things we've mentioned. So I have a whole list of topics that we could do podcast interviews about. But I think you're an excellent operator and very creative and very committed to the people you serve. You started out as a female-focused space. You do have male members. You do a ton of programming, a ton of support for startups. And then, you're also just really focused on some of your business metrics that I've mentioned here and there on the podcast. So anyway, I'm so glad to have you. Anything else you want to add? And then maybe tell us, why, what was the moment when you decided you wanted to become B Corp certified?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you, Jamie, for having me. And as you know, I was so lucky that I found you the very first month that I was ever thinking about opening a co-working space. And that's over 5 years ago.
I know, it's been a while. Exactly.
It's been a long time, but you're my secret sauce to success here. So I'm a big fan. And I'm really honored to be here. And I do remember when we were going through all the, just planning for my business. And I think it was during COVID, I decided that I wanted to become a B Corp because I'm like stuck at home anyway. So why not?
Why not do the work? Yeah.
And you're like, why would you want to do that? So, and then I know today you had given a list of questions, so I was thinking about that as well. But honestly, when I thought about this or becoming a B Corp, I really didn't know what a B Corp was. I was like, is it a B Corp or benefits corporation? Which Kerrie, you probably get all the time. But I knew that certain things were really important to me, and I was putting this whole space together as probably most people have started co-working spaces. Values are so important to do this. And, at HAYVN, we are focused on health and wellness, women, entrepreneurship, and I added in social impact and sustainability because really, that's just so important. And it's something that I feel very strongly about. And, our mission is, we really want to be an inclusive space where we empower those across Fairfield County to be the same. And, it's all about, for me, this is my third half career or whatever, as you call it. And, I really want to be around positive people that can make a change. And I feel that we very strongly that by identifying this way, I can work with people to make a change. And as we get into this more, Kerrie and I are doing a lot together in the state of Connecticut, and I feel like we're really making a difference.
Awesome. Okay. So, Kerrie, maybe we'll jump over. Can you just give us the background? Yeah, maybe we'll flip back to Felicia about sort of all the things you had to think about in order to become a B Corp. Do you want to give us kind of the backdrop of what it is, what it looks like to be B Corp certified, what types of businesses typically do it? It's not a long list, right? It's yeah, you tell us. Yeah, tell us a little bit
Sure,
about
sure.
your background, how you got into doing this, and then yeah, what should we know about B Corps?
Okay, sure. So I'm Kerrie McDevitt, and I am what's called a trained B consultant. So it's a very niche field to be a B Corp consultant. So we are, as you said in the beginning, we are a woman-owned firm. Although we're based in Connecticut, we work with companies all over the country. I also work with some Canadian companies as well to help them through the certification. As far as being certified B Corp, this certification is verified through a nonprofit called B Lab. B Lab is a global organization. It's again a nonprofit, and currently there are 8,000 certified B Corps in the world. 2,500 are within the US and Canada. So that number has grown pretty significantly over the past few years, even since Felicia was first certified in 2021. And basically, a business can be of any size, from startup to well-established larger corporation, can become certified. And one can become certified whether you're in the product business or service business. So really, it's not very discriminating. The assessment is the tool. It's called the B Impact Assessment, is the tool that one uses to become certified. One can also use the tool just to benchmark your social and environmental impact, even if you don't want to become certified. It's a free tool until you press submit. And when you press submit, that means you are actively pursuing certification. So yeah, but it's a great tool to use even for startups, just to model your business as being a socially and environmentally conscious business. So I help companies through this certification process, from beginning till end. So that means going through the assessment. The assessment is divided into different sections, including governance, workers section, community section, environment, and customers. So basically, one considers all what we call stakeholders, anyone and really anything, including the environment, that has a stake in your business. So it's really a complete audit. The assessment is really a complete audit of the business. So once you go through the assessment, if you reach a minimum threshold of 80 points, one can submit. I really like my clients to have closer to 100 points, because there's a strong chance that you're going to lose points during what's called verification with B Lab. So not only do you have to submit the assessment, but you also need to have any affirmative answer needs to have supporting documentation or policy, basically affirming those answers. And then you go into what's called verification with B Lab, where an analyst from B Lab is assigned to your business and will review all of your answers, and you'll even jump on a Zoom call like this with B Lab. So it's a rigorous process, and that's why some folks like Felicia look for help to do it, because running your business is busy enough. This is really working on your business. So I'm always happy to help.
So you mentioned 100 points. How many points are possible?
Possible would be it's basically out of 200 points.
Okay.
So you think of some certified B Corps that maybe are well known, something like a Patagonia, a Dr. Bronner's. They actually are over, I believe, about 150 or somewhere like that. But even scoring over 100 points or over 90 points is very respectable and not easy to achieve.
Got it. Okay. So, and then once we'll talk about the process in a minute. So like Felicia, you've got a background and you've got your little B certified, icon or logo on it. It governs how you operate. What are some of the other, like ways that you like to demonstrate it, or, sort of when is it an explicit certification that you sort of share or promote?
Yeah, so I promote it all the time. Just when we give tours, I talk about our core values. I have it on our door. We have a little sticker. I have a little pin. But what's been great for me is really just being part of this community in Connecticut, where I think when I started, Kerrie, was I number like 11 or something like that? And,
Yes.
now there's 33 companies in
Okay.
Connecticut that are B Corp. And Kerrie and I are actually on the events committee. So we gather
Of course
people
you are.
well, I'll tell you as Abigail says, it's my passion project
Yeah.
because it's like, oh my God, I got enough of my own events, but it's been fun. So we do 4 events a year with the events committee, but we've met so many great people in our community. Like there's in our community alone, like Bigelow Tea and Athletic Brewing. I don't know if you know about them, but
yeah.
they just became a B Corp last year, and that we had an event there. You know, they're doing so well, and Patagonia has spoken to us, and the former CEO of Ben and Jerry's has been in an event, and so just to be among all these people, and then a lot of smaller businesses too, it's been great. And then when I am hiring people, when I am hiring vendors, you know, just thinking about things, and even the events that we have at HAYVN, I'm always thinking about, like, is this person local? Is it, you know, a minority business? And so we've had to create all sorts of documentation, but I have it in my bookkeeping and everything. How am I going to be working with these people? So it's, you know, it's been really, really great.
It sounds
and hard.
Well, yeah. So we could talk about that. It sounds like it makes you really intentional. Like Kerrie, you said people can use the assessment. They can sort of see how they stack up without submitting. And I assume, paying a fee to do the assessment. So you could use it as sort of a guiding principle. I would guess, though, sometimes what happens is people sort of like have a moment of going through the assessment and then they don't actually do the hard work of creating all the SOPs. And Felicia, your point about like hiring and, like little things like bookkeeping, who are my vendors? You just have to be really, conscious and aware of those choices all the time. So I could see it really helping you to just work that into your, like, this is how we operate. This is what we do versus sort of being a nice to have.
Right. Like, and even the materials that we buy in our space, I really try to stay away from plastics if I can. We have composting in the space, and our building is solar, which is amazing. So my landlord has the same vision. There's so much more we could do, but it's a start. And also for members, I was just counting up before we came. I think we have about 25 members that are in this sustainable social impact space. Or maybe even more, but and so we do attract people that are, and then also I pass a lot of people who are thinking about becoming B Corp over to Kerrie's group. Hey, because you cannot do this by yourself. So, which we can talk about.
So I am curious, about maybe Kerrie, that's easy for you. Maybe I'll have you talk about sort of the generic process, and then I'll ask Felicia a couple of questions about, specific to co-working spaces. One of them that I wanted to sneak in really quickly that I think maybe people would worry about is it's not related to the building you're in. Is that true? Like, you don't need to be in a building that has solar, or like you could do this independently of your real estate.
Sure. I mean, as far as that's concerned, again, the B-impact assessment questions change based on your answers. So it's not stagnant. So depending on what kind of business you're in, if you're in manufacturing, you could be a wealth advisor, you could be a legal firm, you could be someone making chocolate, you could be someone making soap, whatever it may be. The questions will vary based on the size of your company, your last annual revenue, and there are questions. For example, one of the questions in the environment is: do you lease your space? Do you own your space? Are you in a co-working space? Do you work virtually from home for the most part? And so those questions will pop up, and then those are gated questions where there'll be different questions depending on how you answer.
Okay, got it. Okay. Well, so that's important to know. So if you're applying as like a physical space owner, a business like a co-working space, and you don't have control over your real estate in the sense that you don't own the building and can't make some of those decisions. Yeah. I mean, can you walk us through like kind of overall what the process looks like? What types of things are a part of the criteria? Maybe Yeah, how long
Sure.
does it typically take? Any of the things you think we should know?
Okay, sure. So basically, there are certain requirements, in order to become a certified B Corp. One we've been speaking about is the completion and submission of what's called the B Impact Assessment, which is a tool. So again, you need to have a minimum of 80 to even submit. And in order to become certified, you need to maintain 80 points. So again, that's why you have to have some kind, you really can't submit without 85 to 90 that way. Another requirement is a legal requirement. So, that's very important. So if a company is, for example, an LLC, like HAYVN, Felicia's business, one needs to amend your operating agreement or articles of incorporation to reflect the fact that you do consider all stakeholders in your decision making. So there's actually precise language that needs to be embedded in that document, and that has to be, a formal document, and that has to be sent to B Lab. So that's a requirement. If you are an S corporation or a C corporation, and if it's available in your state, which at this point it's available in about 40 US states, you need to become what's called a benefit corporation in your state. And so that's where people get confused with the certified B Corp status as opposed to the corporate entity called a benefit corporation. So a benefit corporation also considers not only its shareholders, but its stakeholders in its decision making. So that's inherent in the benefit corporation status. So that's very important. That makes a certification a bit different than a lot of other certifications in that there is a legal change that has to take place. So that makes it even more credible than it already is. So that's a requirement as well. So basically, you go through the whole assessment. Again, you need to develop certain, as Felicia mentioned, certain policies. Maybe you have to revise certain policies, add certain policies that will reflect your social and environmental impact. So the assessment it's actually very smart. It has operational questions, but also one important aspect is what are called impact business models. So that impact business models I would describe as basically business models that make your business sort of stand out from a social or environmental standpoint. So it could be, for example, like a Bombas. We've heard of Bombas. They're a certified B Corp.
I'm wearing some right now.
Great. You shop with your dollar. And basically, Bombas donates one pair of socks to the homeless for every pair of socks that you purchase. And they have an impact business model, for example, under the community section called Design to Give, because that's really an intrinsic part of who they are. It's really a part of the soul of the company. For example, Felicia has an impact business model currently related to what's called also in the community section called local economic development. Because she, for example, is based in Fairfield County, Connecticut. The vast majority of her customers or members are local. She purchases locally. She hires locally. She is a local business at this point. So that is an impact business model that she currently has. So with that, I sort of geek out about opening up what are called impact business models for the clients that I work with, because as I get to know the clients better, I can sort of see, where we could possibly open up some more points for that. So whether it be, if, for example, you work with a lot of nonprofit organizations, there's an impact business model related to that. There are certainly a lot of environmental impact business models as well. So those are just some, sort of opportunities that unfortunately, or fortunately, because I've been through the impact business model dozens of times. It's sort of like taking the SAT. I think of it that way. I have teenagers now. The more you take the SAT, the more you understand the test and all of that. If you've been through the assessment like I have, maybe about 50 times, you understand sort of how to open up those gated questions and those impact business models. And that will give you more points that you deserve, and that's really my job, is to make sure that your final points, value, or the final decision by B Lab adequately reflects all that you do. Because really, like, look at Felicia, all that she does for the community, all that she does as far as educating her members, all as far as, whether she's supporting local minority-owned businesses, whatever it may be. We want to make sure that her public report, and there's a public impact report that is available. One can search on the B Corp directory and see all of the certified B Corp, including HAYVN, and see all of the detail as how they did in each section of the assessment. And we just want to make sure that that public report adequately reflects all that she does and all that any any certified B Corp does. So as far as the process, basically, as I said, you go through the assessment, you gather all of the supporting documents and data, and then there is a pretty rigorous verification process with B-Lab where they will analyze all of that data, all of those supporting documents, all of your answers, and make sure that you are worthy of being a certified B Corp. So we as consultants help you through that entire process. It usually takes, during COVID, there was an increase in applicants. So the waiting time was longer. Now, currently, I mentioned to my clients, depending on the size of the company, but it can take anywhere between, from start to finish, starting with me, anywhere between 9 months to, let's say, 12 months from beginning to end. So it is not a short process. One has to be committed to it, and it doesn't have to be just one person in the business who's committed. Sometimes it's nice to create a B team, so to speak, that works together.
Yeah, it's not a fun process at all. But
Kerrie
makes
it fun.
She makes it, but I said it's because I didn't know what I was getting into the first time, and now I'm recertifying. So Kerrie's been helping me through that, because every 3 years you have to recertify.
Okay. Wow.
But like the first time, I didn't know what I was getting into. I took the assessment. I worked with Connecticut Small Business Development Center. My advisor started it, but then we moved over to someone who specialized in it. It's funny because Kerrie and Jen Gorin, who are at the company, they had come, it just was random. Like Jen had come over and said, "Hey, I want to tell you about this B Corp thing and you should consider it." And she put a whole presentation. I'm like, "Well, I'm in the middle of it and I would love for you to help."
Yeah. You're waving the flag.
Yeah. But it was one of those, I said, it felt like doing laundry every week. Like you keep folding it and then it keeps coming back and there's more things you have to do and more things you have to do. I'm understanding it more this time, but there's, so a lot of papers that you have to create. And luckily I also have, one of my members is Alexis Brooks, who I feel like you've spoken to before. She's a lawyer, and
I was thinking earlier when you were talking about the legal requirements, I was like, good thing Felicia has a lawyer in the space who's there.
And she has rewritten all the agreements, and now she also is on our Be Local Connecticut committee too. So it's been a great way to integrate everybody. But yeah, we're doing it again, and it's better this time. I think we're going to hit submit tomorrow, right? Is that what you said?
we should. We're ready now. So
yeah, but we've been meeting every Friday for 3 months, is it, or 2 months, and just going. It seems like a lot going through, and then I have homework on the weekends to find all this stuff. So it would be great to have a team. That would be
mostly creating document. Like, what's the laundry part of it? Like, what's sort of the heavy lift?
It's running numbers, right?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I would say, again, for every affirmative answer in the assessment, and there are between 200 to 300 questions within the assessment. I mean, again, it varies depending on the size of the company. The larger you are, the more complex the process can be. But there's a lot of tracking that's involved, whether it be, for example, from all your employees, noting to see how much, so whether it be a list of your employees with how much they're paid, where they live, are they being paid a living wage for the county where they're living in, assessing, for example, the diversity of your workers, of your staff, to a list of your significant suppliers, those you purchase from. So B-Lab is concerned about, who are your suppliers, as well as who are your customers, who do you serve, and who do you purchase from. So it's as important as far as looking at your supply chain, as well as taking care of your own members or your own customers as well. So as far as the data gathering, it could be, for example, depending on what impact business models, especially that open up, you'll be gathering information. So if you have a design to give, as I mentioned, the Bombas model, we have to make sure that you're tracking, for example, all those socks you're donating, or if you're donating monetarily, or if you're donating through 1% for the planet. We just have to have the evidence for that. So it's a little bit like, defending your dissertation in a way, just to make sure you have everything lined up. But my job is, I describe myself as a cheerleader / nudge. So I'm organizing as we go along as well. So we have a shared folder. So by the time my clients get to verification, that process with B-Lab, that process is not as should not be as challenging, because everything is ready. You're not scrambling at that point like folks who perhaps don't have consultants. They might be scrambling to gather that data. Like, for example, showing that a significant percentage of your clients are nonprofit organizations, or that a significant portion of your suppliers are women-owned businesses, because all of that is important to B-Lab, and they're looking for that information. So it's just, it's also me, the way I operate. I just want to make sure that the client is ready with any supporting, whether it be a policy, if we need to edit, I help edit, whether it be employee handbooks, whether it be, we need to create a remote worker policy, a lactation policy, looking at parental leave, all of that work we help with. So in a lot of cases, my clients will come back and say, wow, I not only became B Corp certified, but I got all of my operational, everything, all my ducks in a row. I have now a comprehensive employee handbook I'm proud of, and other things. So I think it's sometimes a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1, that you're getting a lot of things done in the process.
Yeah, I was wondering that because Felicia, you did it shortly after you hadn't been open for that long. So were you sort of in that camp where it sort of helped you to create some of that documentation and formal procedures that you hadn't gotten to yet?
Yes, absolutely. Creating website pages that we needed, getting my employee handbook, we had one, but updating it, and also just looking at, like what Kerrie said, how are you paying your employees? Are you paying them at living wages? And unfortunately, as you know, in Fairfield County, it's crazy. But there was a lot of that, and luckily we have a bunch of it from last time that we can just pull out again this time around.
And now you're updating all of your documentation and staying current. So Felicia, I'm curious, like for other co-working space owners that are listening that are interested, you already had sort of a mindset that was very aligned with B Corp and some of the activities you were doing, but what were some of the gaps? Like, were there things like that just like you weren't doing that you needed to do to sort of check the box, or am I not thinking about that the right way?
I think. I mean, Kerrie, you're kind of knowing what I didn't have.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, I wouldn't use, I understand that checking the box, but this is much more than checking the box. And it's not a certification for anyone who just wants to check a box, because it is, it is really, one has to be aligned. The values have to be aligned in that you be taking into consideration all of your stakeholders, and also that you have a social and environmental vantage point to everything basically that you do. And as you mentioned before, being quite deliberate now in your choices. And I think what's really exciting about the certification is how it can really invigorate a community, whether it be the entire HAYVN community, for example, whether it be also the group of employees, that to feel really, there's a real sense of pride to work for a B Corp. And that's one of the reasons why folks and businesses want to become certified now, because, fortunately, this upcoming generation, and, I look at my daughter who's 19, she really is very deliberate in where she makes her purchases. She'll be deliberate in where she ends up working, that she'll want to work for a business that cares about the environment and cares about social issues. So it's been proven that B Corps have a higher retention rate amongst their employees, that people really feel, that their values are also aligned with the business's values. So not only does it attract consumers, which I think Felicia can speak to, and attract folks who want to rent space from her. They search up where the B Corps, I think that Felicia's had that experience, which is amazing.
Huh.
Yeah, we've had people from England, that are coming over to the States, and they need a place for a meeting room. So they've used our space for that, and members that have joined because we are a B Corp.
Because that's sort of like a criteria for them. They want to align. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I agree with what Kerrie said. It's not like a check the box. Like, I don't think everybody should do this.
Yeah.
If, just for the sake of doing it. And, looking at your ROI, it's a different type of return on investment that we're talking about. Although things are changing, like in the state of Connecticut, last week, 2 weeks ago, we did an event at the legislators' office, and we got 60 people from around the state of Connecticut to come, who are all in focus, like B Corps or B allies, and they are putting a bill together to get, if you are a B Corp, you can get tax credits, and which is cool, because so things are changing, for us, which is great.
Yeah. So, but it really is about this being the type of business that you want to operate and the way you want to do business and behave, and sort of having a way to communicate that externally. Like the seal, says, like, right, we really measure up to these external standards, and we can sort of communicate it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a seal of approval, a seal of approval.
A pretty rigorous one. I mean, it is.
As it should be,
Mm-hmm.
And actually the standards are evolving as we speak. As far as the assessment, it's currently in the process of, there's always input and changing due to input from folks who are taking the assessment. But this is a pretty significant change that's coming up that will come into play sometime in 2025, where the assessment is changing. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But I was going to say, as far as the ROI, I think one of the main ones, well, I always mention the employees and attracting great workers, because even B Lab has a recruitment site called B Work, where folks who are looking to work for B Corps, can go to look for jobs, and that's, so there are a lot of resources. But I think one of the main ROIs is really the community, whether it be on the global level, whether it be on the US Canadian level, whether it be on the local, as far as, we're on the board of, the B Local Connecticut, which is a fairly new organization, but there are many B Locals throughout the world. So, and if there isn't, like there wasn't in Connecticut a couple of years ago, so we decided to start one. So it's just a great community. There are biannual retreats where you can go and meet with others. And there's a lot of collaboration that happens amongst B Corps as well, globally. So whether it be Ben & Jerry's, as a B Corp, working with, whether it be Greyston Bakery, they use their brownies, so, I think that everyone's trying to, and it's a very collaborative versus competitive community. So we all support each other.
Yeah, it's very similar to our co-working groups.
Yeah, I was just
I mean, I think it's a very similar community in general of people that just you love to be around. So
yeah. So is there a fee to get certified?
There is a fee. Again, the assessment itself is free until you press submit. So the submission fee is anywhere between, I believe it starts at $150 and up, maybe up to like $500 or $750 to submit. And that's basically that goes towards B Lab, because of all I'm sure there's a lot of time that's spent going through the assessment and so on. So they want to make sure that you're serious if you press submit, because you then put in the queue, and then eventually you'll be verified. And then there is an annual certification fee that's based on your past annual revenue. So that is anywhere, the minimum is, I will say, 2,000, but I'll put an asterisk next to that, because I'll explain also their equity discounts. But the minimum is 2,000 and up, again, based on your annual revenue. But if, for example, I think it's up to $3 million or $2 million in annual revenue. If you are a woman-owned business, if you are a BIPOC-owned business, if you're LGBTQ, veteran-owned, if you're a business with less than 100,000 in annual revenue, there are lots of different equity discounts where you can receive up to 70%, 40%, 70%. It depends on the category. You can receive a discount on the annual certification fee. But with the certification fee comes a lot of resources, again, being part of the community.
Yeah. And it goes to support. And then there's the time. Felicia, if you had to estimate how many hours did it take you to do the first round? Or how about how many hours a week do you think you spent on like the sort of the process and the documentation for the, sort of the verification part of the process?
Maybe 30 hours
Total?
What do you think?
Total, yeah. I mean, I would say, as far as, again, it depends how you approach it, if you're working with a consultant or not. But I usually tell folks to allot about 2 hours a week for at least for 6 weeks. And then there might be in between, after submitting, there might be a couple of hours of work per week or every other week, that you should put aside just for B Corp stuff, just to follow up. But some weeks you might not have anything, and other weeks you might have a little bit more. But
actually, I feel like this time around we started in February, I think, when I was out in Tahoe, Jamie.
Oh, nice.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of like minutia work that I was doing over the weekends after I had an hour and a half call with Kerrie, and we tried to do some of the stuff. Then she gave me homework, and then I had lists of stuff to do. So yeah, it was probably about 20 or 30 hours.
And Kerrie, is it typical that you have like long-term relationships, like you see people through, the initial certification and then the recertification?
Oh yeah. I'm basically, I never think of like an end date with my clients, because we keep in touch. I'm always available if folks want me to speak to their teams, for example, about what it means to be a B Corp. I do that quite a bit. So just keeping in touch. And then before you know it, it's time to sort of start getting ready for the recertification. So time flies. And we also at Impact Growth Partners, we'll do like webinars once in a while to gather all of our clients together, so that our clients, actually, we love to connect our clients with other clients, whether they be in similar fields or not. But we like to build we have our own little subgroup of Impact Growth Partners clients. So over the years, we try to bring them together as much as we can virtually. So we do that as well. So yeah, that we have, I think of a lot of my clients like Felicia as a friend, and, just want them I just like to see their businesses grow and be successful and benefit as much from being part of this amazing community.
Felicia, for anybody who's thinking about this, like, do you have a sense for like who is this a no-brainer for, and who do people just sort of inherently know? Like, is there any, I think the thing I'm still trying to solidify is like the category of like things you have to have in place besides like hiring and vendor relationships. I think the analogy I keep thinking is like the well building standard. And so when I say checklist, I'm thinking like, do I have enough plants? Do I have like, like I think they have literally like things sort of like verify like that is it, so I'm trying to like, get a little more like, what's the word, tangible about sort of what's on the assessment.
Right. Well, I'm thinking like anybody who's like me that has a women focus, women
or
centric,
not even women, but could be right,
or
or
minority,
like, any sort
or
of economic development support for particular. Okay.
Nonprofit focus for sure. And then again, maybe people that are focused on sustainability in their business as well, which I know there's a lot of groups
I think
that
right tends to be inherent in how people think about their co-working business and designing it, that way.
Right. And Kerrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also, if you are, educational focus, that you do these events and bring communities together that way, economic development.
I mean, there's something for everyone, really. I mean, again, that's, Felicia's talking about different impact business models that especially
Yeah.
co-working spaces could have. Felicia has a whole series on sustainability and she's educating her members constantly, and again the local economic development, and whether it be social impact, giving back. If you have a considerable, like if you donate back to nonprofit organizations, you're 1% for the planet. There are lots of different opportunities, but I don't think it's so much of the checking the box. Again, the assessment is in the process of evolving. So there may be a little bit more of that with the next assessment a year from now or so, as far as having some minimum requirements in order to be certified.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was helpful the way you said it's sort of like it's like a SMART assessment, and it sort of varies depending on your model. And yeah, that makes a little bit of sense to me. Felicia, anything else you would share for somebody who's thinking about becoming certified?
Well, just, make sure that it's the right thing for your business model and you have the stamina to do it. It is hard as a co-working owner. You're trying to do so many different things.
Yeah.
But, if you have a good handle on your numbers as well, that's important, that it's at your fingertips, which I think most co-working owners are. And yeah, I think I actually, once you go through it, you realize that maybe you can go for the women in business certification as well, because I think someone said that's a lot easier than this one. But yeah, it's really worth it for me. And I think people should at least do, like Kerrie said, the assessment and see how you're running your business. So
Yeah.
it's great to, just, what do they say? Be a business is a force for good. And you just feel like you are making a difference in the world.
Yeah, totally. So Kerrie, can we link to the assessment in the show notes? Like if that's just something like on a site that people can go through, and to your point, until you hit submit, it's yours to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, it's a free assessment. You can also link certainly to our business if folks want to go through that assessment with a consultant, because oftentimes, again, I think some folks who come to us, they start the assessment and they realize it's pretty complex and they don't really know how to answer the questions. And so then they turn to us as well. So certainly any of you, if you have any questions, you want to reach out, happy to jump on a call. There's no strings attached, but just to talk about the B-corp, movement, talk about the certification and how we can help.
Okay, perfect. I was going to ask, if you kind of guide people through how to think about whether it's, right for them,
Yeah,
if they're ready to dive in. Okay, love it. Then we'll put your contact info in the show notes as well. Awesome. Thanks for doing this. I think it's well, Felicia, I should ask, do you know off the top of your head who else is any other co-working space operators that are?
There was one, I think that like the Hub or something. I feel like you had mentioned it at the last meeting. I wrote it down because I think the first time I went through, I had asked you, I said, are there any other and at that point you didn't
wasn't
have any.
Aware of any. I think you were.
I'm going to do a quick search for that right now if you have a minute.
Yeah.
And you said Shift is that new?
Theirs might be newer. I'm trying to remember their timeline, and I can't remember when they said they went through it. They must be still within the first 3 years, maybe. But I could totally have that wrong. So I'll ask them.
And I feel like there's a space in Australia as well.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to send this to you, but I did pull up. There are certainly plenty of co-working. I mean, quite a few.
Ooh.
Oh, I'd love to
more
see
than
that
10.
too.
Let's see. So there's Huerta Co-working, and I can just run through these in Buenos Aires. Arc Co-working in London. Let's see.
It's much more popular in overseas.
Yes, ESG. I mean, just that whole concept is more of a focus in Europe for sure. In the UK.
Impact Hub in Madrid. There are some that are incubators as well, but Quench is in Victoria, British Columbia. Hub Australia.
Okay. Oh, Hub Australia is. So Brad.
That's the one.
Okay. And then Quench is Tessa McLaughlin, I think is her last name. Lachlan. I have to look it up. She's been on the podcast too. You would love her, Felicia, if you haven't met her.
I've heard her podcast.
Yes.
I remember it. Yeah.
Okay.
Impacto Ecuador. Impact Hub Bern, Desk Lodge in Bristol, the UK.
Ah,
So there's only a few in the
Full
States.
workspaces, yeah.
yeah.
So maybe it's just me and
Well, there's only
and
2,500 total. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there are not a lot of co-working spaces. Felicia and Kerrie, thank you for taking the time to do this, for sharing the process and kind of an overview of what it looks like to be a B Corp. And Kerrie will definitely put your contact info in the show notes. Anybody who's listening, please reach out. And Felicia, I have a feeling you get lots of outreach anyway, but thank you and congratulations. I mean, the work that you're doing has a lot of impact, and for, sort of formally recognizing that and continuing your commitment to that. I know it's a lot of work and I know it's very meaningful to you, but yeah, it's great to be to see what you're doing, and you're an inspiration to many of us. So thank you.
thank you, Jamie.